Hey there. Come here. Come here. Over the past 3 to 4 years, there has been what world-famous farmer Joel Salatin calls a homesteading tsunami. And with this flood of new people being homesteaders, well, there's a lot of new people that have been raising chickens and chicks for the very first time. And at the peak of this homesteading craze, hatcheries in places like Tractor Supply were completely selling out of baby chicks for the whole year. Now, while this was good for business during that time, however, there was also a lot of first-time chicken raisers. I don't know if that's a term or not, but a lot of new people raising chicks for the first time that had no idea how to raise chicks. And as a result, a lot of people were finding out that raising chicks and chickens are harder than they thought they would be. And they ended up getting rid of them on Marketplace and other areas, as well as some of them just sadly dying when they didn't need to die, just because the people didn't know what they were doing. Now, raising chicks and chickens is not that difficult, but I do have a warning that chicks and other live animals are not gadgets that you can turn on and off at your leisure. No, they are live animals that have needs that must be met on a daily basis. And that's what I'm going to discuss in this video, is the must for raising chicks, aka baby chickens. But before I do, I want to let you know that I am opening up an online area that will contain a plethora of in-depth content, uncensored content that will help you live a homegrown life that includes a full library of things discussing chickens, ducks, and so much more. So make sure you get on the wait list to be the first to know when this area opens up. Now back to raising chicks. And with that, the first thing that you must do with raising chicks is to prepare and educate yourself. Watch videos, read books, read magazines, do whatever you need to do to get the knowledge that you need to gear up and to be ready to raise chicks. But I'm going to talk about a lot of that in this video. But you need to get to know the various breeds of chickens that are out there, so that way you can properly choose the best breed for you and your goals. For example, if your goal is to have a lot of eggs, you want a chicken that's going to produce a lot of eggs, you don't want to go getting something like the Cornish cross that's a meat bird. No, you want to pick a bird that's like the Murray McMurray Red Star that's going to produce a lot of brown eggs for you. Or if you don't want brown eggs, you want white eggs, you may want to go with a Leghorn that's going to produce a lot of white eggs for you. But you also may want to pick something that's more of like a heritage breed or something like that that's going to produce eggs for you. So you may want to go with a Black Oshawott or a Rhode Island Reds. Those are things that you need to know. But maybe you want to raise chickens for meat. Then you need to pick a breed that's more appropriate for producing meat for you. Because if your goal is to have some meat for you and your family, you don't want to go picking something like a Bantam that's going to barely have any meat on it at all. So it's a must to get some education before you start raising some birds. And another thing to consider is if you want a chicken as a pet or that's going to be around children, you want to pick a breed that's going to be more docile and calmer. Because each of the breeds have different characteristics among, for the most part, those breeds. And some breeds can be flightier than others, so those won't be good to be around children. But those are just things to think about as you become educated about the different breeds. Me personally, I have several different breeds of chickens, each one having a different function and desire and need that they're fulfilling for myself and my family. For example, for my brown egg layers, I have mostly raised Black Oshawotts, Rhode Island Reds, and also Murray McMurray's Red Stars. And for my meat birds, for commercial production, I raise Cornish crosses, and for my heritage breeds, I raise Delawares. Secondly, I think it's a must to select a reputable source for buying your chicks. I get chicks from one of 3 sources, or sometimes all 3. 1, my favorite hatchery, Murray McMurray. 2, a breeder, or 3, myself. I'll either incubate eggs or have a broody chicken hatch out eggs for us. But whatever route you go, whether you decide to go to your local ag store, another hatchery or breeder, wherever, it's important to do your research and trust the source that you're getting it from. I don't recommend just getting chicks from anybody and everybody online, because you don't know exactly what you could be getting in some of those cases. So those are things to be mindful of. Select a reputable source for getting your birds. The third thing that's a must for raising chickens is to have or set up an appropriate brooder space. A brooder can be set up in a garage or barn or any type of outbuilding. Now, I don't recommend setting up a brooder in your house because it can get kind of smelly. I know, because we've been there. And for the brooder itself, if you're going with something like a large number of birds, you could go with something like a stock tank to raise your chicks in. But you want to select something with walls high enough to keep the area draft free. Now, I do discourage using things like a cardboard box or plastic bins for brooders, because the plastic, well, it can melt from the heat lamp, and the cardboard boxes, well, they could burn up and catch on fire. So I don't recommend using those as brooders. A lot of different companies actually sell brooder kits. And one of my personal favorite brooders that is out there is the Quik Clean brooder from Premier One Supplies. It's super easy to set up. It comes with an appropriate size feeder and water for the brooder, and it's super easy to clean. But one of the things that I noticed about this brooder, even though it's easy to clean because the poop just falls down through the grates into the tray that you can easily pull out and dispose of the manure, those grates, for the first 2 to 3 days of that chick's life, as they're learning to walk around, sometimes they get their feet caught in that grate. So what I'll do is I'll put down some paper or paper towels or something for them to walk on as they're learning to walk. And then as they get older, within a couple days, I'll take that paper out. Here. All right, let's make sure we get this spot covered up. Hang in there. I'm going to cover that grate up. There we go. I don't want to press anybody either. Alright, you guys are just going to be in here for a short amount of time. And speaking of cleaning, another must is your brooder needs to be cleaned out each time that you use it. It's a must to keep their environment healthy for them to be healthy. And since I raise a lot of birds each year, in addition to the Quik Clean brooder, I've also constructed my own large brooder in which I raise chickens, ducklings, goslings, a lot of different things in each year. And I constructed this brooder with a number of doors so that way it's easier to clean out. Typically, when I clean out the brooder in the spring and summer, I'll generally make a good compost out of that bedding and old manure. But the bedding that I'm cleaning out here is a mixture of old pine shavings and chick poop from the last batch of chicks that I raised at the end of the season last fall. And the reason why I left it in there so long, well, it's so the manure would age and be ready to put in the garden right now. And the last part of cleaning out a brooder is making sure it gets aired out. And I added a fan just to speed up the process. Now, I will say a brooder like the Quik Clean brooder is so much faster to clean out. You don't have to worry about the bedding. All you do is spray it out when the chicks have graduated from it. Next, once you have an appropriate brooder that's clean, the next must is you must have bedding for most brooders. And for bedding, you can use a number of different things. Some people use sand, some people use hay, some people use straw, some people use paper towel, some people use newspaper. My favorite thing to use though, actually I have two that are my favorite. One is pine shavings. You can use large or fine. I personally like fine. Or you can also use leaves, and I actually like to use mulch leaves. But whatever you choose, most brooders need some type of bedding because that provides the chicks with an area that's sanitary, that they can poop in, scratch it around, move it up, and then you can add more shavings on top of that. It just helps their area to be healthy, so that way the birds are healthy. And after you've selected an appropriate brooder that's clean with bedding inside of it, the next thing that's a must is you need to have a heat source. A heat source is a must. Unless you have a mother hen that has hatched out some chicks, then she will provide the warmth that those babies need. But if you don't have a mother that's hatched out eggs and you've gotten your chicks from a breeder or hatchery, or you've incubated your own, it is a must for them to have a heat source in order to stay alive. Two sources of heat that most people use with raising chicks are one, a heat lamp, which is what most people use, and two, a heat plate. I actually prefer to use both. However, the heat plate does have a tendency, as the chicks get older and they start hopping on top, they will poop right on top of it, and you will have to scrape and clean that off at some point. But it does provide a consistent heat. However, one downside with the heat plate is it doesn't emit a lot of heat. So if they're in an area where outside of their brooder is really cold, well, I don't necessarily recommend the heat plate for that, which is why I use both a heat plate and the lamp, because the lamp will emit more heat. And once you've set up your heat lamp, you want to make sure that the floor of your brooder is around 95 to 100 degrees. Once you get those chicks in their first week, that is the temperature that they need to keep warm coming out of that egg. Each week after that, their requirement for heat drops by 5 degrees. But you don't necessarily have to move your heat lamp further and further away from them, especially if you don't have a heat lamp that's an adjustable height. They'll gradually move out and get further away from the heat lamp as needed. In addition to a heat source, feeders and waters are another must-have for raising chicks. Now, I know some people are on a budget and you may be using various items from your kitchen to put their feed and water in. But with the more birds that you raise, having the right equipment or better equipment can help make the job easier and more efficient. Now, I don't recommend any specific water and feeder, but just having good quality equipment that is clean is important. With that in mind, if you have feeders and waters that you have been previously using, make sure you clean those out. I like to clean mine with soap and water and a scrub brush. And another good way to sanitize them is let them dry out in the sun. Stand up. All right. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Next, fill up their water with water. Some people will also put in an apple cider vinegar mix. Some people will also use a pre or probiotic. But either way, they need to be hydrated. They need water. And related to that is you must provide your chicks with the right feed. They can't eat pelleted feed and they can't eat big chunks of things. They're small little tiny creatures that need something that's suitable for them. Whether it's chick starter that you buy at your local feed mill or your local ag store, or it's feed that you make yourself, DIY chick starter. But regardless, either way, they need to have some type of feed that is small for them to eat, like a mesh or a meal, and it needs to have a protein content of 20 to 23%. Now, I prefer, when I'm buying my chick starter from my local feed mill or the ag store, I prefer it to be non-medicated. That's a personal preference of mine. And for people trying to make their own chick starter, people will use ingredients such as oats, wheat, peas, fish meal, and a number of other things to provide the chicks with the nutrients that they need. And the main thing to keep in mind with your chicks and providing them with the right feed is keep in mind that the better start you get, the better the development of that bird is going to be for the better performance later on. Now we come to my favorite part, and that is you must pick up your chicks. If you're getting chicks from a breeder, an ag store, or even a hatchery, you need to pick up your birds. They're not going to be delivered to your door. I've not really heard of delivered to your door chicks. You got to pick them up. And when I order from Murray McMurray Hatchery, I generally get an email a couple of weeks before they ship, and then another email when they actually ship, and I'm able to sign up for notifications from the post office to get text messages and even a phone call once they arrive. And all through the process, I can keep track of them by tracking where they are during the shipping process. And it's so exciting to actually go and pick them up. And I know there's some people that think shipping birds is just this cruel thing. But if you didn't know, chicks, when they hatch, they have absorbed the egg yolk from the eggshell, and they really don't have to eat for the first 2 to 3 days of their life, which makes it easy to ship them.
Out of there.
Let's go.
They have really
Take these off yet or not? Okay. Oh, there's a bunch in there. Alright. The ducklings will probably be the easier one. Let me set these over here. These are chicks.
These are the chicks, and there's a bunch in there. How many are in there?
I think 50 in there. I think there's just 25 in there. Alright. That is fine. We got it. Alright, here you go.
No.
There we go.
And he's going to help you.
Yep, put your hand, yep, there and there.
Yep, really
like
nice
that.
and gentle, like you hold Jessica. Oh, look at their little wet feet, huh?
The name of this one's a Muscovy duck.
Muscovy duck.
Yeah. It should be mostly black when it's fully
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead and hand it back, and then June, you
Do
can
you
have
want to hold one too? No? Okay.
You sure?
All right. Yep.
And then put your hand over the top
Yep.
like he showed.
Yep, just like that.
So that you kind
There you go.
of make him
So it
into
won't
a
jump out
little,
of it.
Yeah,
Yep.
he'll jump. Oh,
All
that's
right.
so sweet. Can I get the door for you?
Thank you. All right. Thank y'all. But once I've brought them home, I'm introducing them to water, dipping each of their beak inside the water so that way they know where their water source is. Now, once you've done all that, you're in the clear. You don't really have to do anything, right? Chicks in the brooder, you're good to go, right? No. The final must is you must watch and tend to them on a daily basis. Especially early on, making sure that the chicks in the brooder, they're not getting too cold. One sign of the chicks getting too cold is they're all bundled up on top of each other trying to stay warm. And then another thing is making sure they don't get too hot, making sure they have ability to get away from the heat, maybe even provide them with shade in areas so they're not just having that intense heat on them. Especially as they get older, they want to get away from the heat more and more. Some other things to keep an eye out for is making sure that the birds are having good movement, none of them are sluggish, and regretfully, well, most of the time there is about a 1 to 5% mortality rate for newly hatched chicks. It can even go up to 10%, but if you have anything more than that, then there's something to be alarmed about. There's probably a problem somewhere that needs to be addressed. But just prepare yourself that the chances are good of losing a couple birds here and there early on. And as you're watching your birds, another thing to keep out for is, well, making sure that their brooder has a lid, some type of cover, especially if you have animals like cats or other things that may want to eat your chicks. One of the problems that I've had in the past is with rats. Rats have killed numerous chicks and numerous ducklings. So I've had to set rat trap after rat trap. And one of the things, extra measure that I have taken recently, well, I put one of our dogs inside the building that my brooder is in. My dog won't eat the chicks, and he's done an excellent job with keeping the rats away from the brooder. And over the weeks that you're raising those chicks, have fun with it. Let kids be involved in seeing it. It really is a neat process, and it's something fun and exciting to do. It's also exciting when you get to transition them outside for the very first time. And with that in mind, sometimes there comes a time where you need to transition them out of the brooder. And maybe the temperatures aren't exactly ideal outside yet, but you still need to transition them outside. Well, one of the things that I do is I will take the chicks, transition them from the brooder into a chicken tractor, set it near a building or something that can block a lot of wind, and I'll put a heat lamp inside of that chicken tractor. In addition to the heat lamp, I'll also cover the tractor, especially the areas where high draft can come in, with a tarp. However, with that in mind, there still needs to be some degree of airflow in the tractor so that way the chicks aren't suffocating and that way they're also getting fresh air. So I'll leave a little area where that airflow can happen. And I'll either move that tractor on a regular basis or I'll add pine shavings to the floor of it, giving them another area with bedding inside. Ideally, you want to move your chicks outside, graduate them from the brooder when they're anywhere from 4 weeks to 6 weeks old. Cornish crosses, since they grow a lot faster, can be transitioned as early as 3 weeks outside, because around this age is when they start to develop their true feathers. However, one really important thing to keep in mind with this, especially with the birds still being young, is to make sure that if there is rain or whatever, that their tractor won't get flooded, that they'll have an area to get up off the ground, or they're not in an area that water will settle and sit. Regretfully, this is one thing I had to learn the hard way. Less glamorous side of homesteading. Raising chicks isn't rocket science. However, there are things that they must have in order to thrive. I hope that you found this video helpful. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already to this channel. See you next time.